right, thank you so much for staying with Daybreak. Let's continue that conversation now and switch gears into youth leadership and integrity. Let's talk about the 9th of August that's coming up. What should the youth be thinking about? But there's a lot of information also coming through. Let me read just some of them and get your quick reactions on what they say. Chalo Woodrozy says, youth always disappoint politically. They don't have a stand. Money has affected their stand and reasoning. They are always skewed towards supporting and voting for the old politicians while neglecting their fellow youth. Now, I'll start with you on this one. Ken, what is your reaction to Charles Woodrose? You says here that youth always disappoint politically. They don't have a stand. Money has affected their stand and reasoning. They are always skewed towards supporting and voting for the old politicians while neglecting their fellow youth.
Actually, I wanted to tell him that we don't vote for old people because, as they can see, in Kenya Kwanza, we are voting for young people. The only challenge is that those young people looking at the political terrain that has not been levelized and regulated has put us to a serious and bad situation. Because if you look at the general cost of election, you know, if you want to contest for a senatorial position, you will need something like 35.5 million. If you want to contest for a member of parliament, you'll need something like 18.2 million. And the young people are really struggling to ensure that they also participate in this arena. If you look at the IEBC spending limit, they had put presidential campaign expenditure at around 4.4 billion. If you tell a young person today to run for president, where will he get that 4.4 billion? Because that is the bare minimum. So sometimes we are not looking at just time, but we are looking at a person who will be able to solve address some of our challenges or the issues that we are facing as young people. So we are also supporting quality leader, because that is the question we need to ask. Like if you ask me from where I sit, I support someone who will be able to address economic challenges we are facing as a country, because the largest population of young people are suffering from unemployment. They're also suffering from, they cannot do business. Even those who have business cannot actually continue doing business because they cannot borrow capital without lesser interest. So if you look at Kenya Kwanza, and I can tell you what we offer, because that is the most important thing. Looking at this country and the debt that currently we have as a country, which is now at 8.2 billion, trillion. You look at it and compare with the the GDP and what we get from the revenue. Out of 100 shillings that we collect from the revenue, we are using 68 shillings to pay debt, remaining with around 32 shillings, which we use in the recurrent expenditure and other issues. So even now, we are even borrowing money to pay salaries. So young people cannot claim and say that there's a space for them to get employment. So as Kenya Kwanza, what we are doing is that we want to seal loopholes for corruption. We want to reduce the debt burden on Kenyans. We also want to focus on, agribusiness by reducing fertilizers and issues that can help young people now to go and do agribusiness. And these are incentives coming together, and these are the manifestos that will support as young people. Because when you say, when someone comes, and because these old men, they do not have proper ideology that will address these issues. When somebody tells you that is going to give you a handout of certain amount, which is 6,000 shillings, sometimes somebody was telling me that is a lie, and is a populist ideology that is meant to wink the support of young people. And we were asking, even in this the budget supplementary that is in Parliament, we have not seen our opponent from the Azimio bringing this up and including it in the budget supplementary, because this is the budget that is going to affect 2022, 2023. So it means that if it is not factored in the budget, then we are not sure whether we are going to get 6,000 shillings.
Okay.
And if it is possible, then they should also give us a deposit of 3,000 by this year, so that we know that they are very serious. So sometimes we are looking for serious people who can now take us seriously.
Okay. Umi, your reaction to Chalo Woodrose, you say youth have always disappointed politically. They don't have a stand. In fact, that's the part that I want you to respond to. They don't have a stand. Money has affected their stand and reasoning. They're always skewed towards supporting and voting for the old politicians while neglecting their fellow youth.
Trevor, I'd like to break down that concept of old politicians, because if you look at the current political environment that we're enjoying as young people, even sitting on this table, is a contribution of a young activist at some point. Raila Odinga was not born at 70 years old. He was also a youth. And during his youth, he had a track record of fighting for the political scenes, the political rights that we enjoy. And today we're able to have as many political parties, for example. So my concept on this old and young, it's not about old and young. Kibaki, our president, was also old, and what were the track records? It used to take me hours to come to Nairobi, but now I need just 4 hours in a good car and I'm here, because of the thicker roads, the contributions of the president is there. So this thing of saying young people and you know, we don't have the money to run for office, I would like to disagree. And maybe that would be a challenge for people who want to have enough money to run for office, for example, because the campaign of Honorable Raila Odinga resonates with many. So it's easy for him to have as many people to support his campaign because of his integrity. And I'll come back to that point shortly. If you have a clear track record and people have seen the work that you've done over the period, I would easily wake up and decide this is a candidate I'm voting for, and this is a candidate I'll invest both my time and money. So ours is not about money. Money is, I wouldn't say it's not an issue. We have the people, the public. Ours is a people campaign funded. It's not funds that could be questioned at some point, where people would ask, where are you getting all this money from? We don't go to church to give out 1 or 2 million. We go to meet these people to tell them our manifesto and our agenda. So that's why every day we wake up, we keep winning people on our side. On the point of integrity, the promises that Honorable Raila Odinga had made, especially when he said he could provide 6,000 shillings for young people, there's precedence for that. He talked about setting aside funds for the old, which has benefited the population so far. He's talked about creating a ministry for young people. I would easily believe that, because he once talked of creating an ASAL ministry for the nomadic people. And today, I'm able to enjoy every benefit that has come from that ministry. We've seen the birth of the NDMA, which addresses drought issues. In and out, we have drought issues in this country every day. From that particular ministry, we were able to see the birth of National Council for Nomadic Education, which addresses the demands of ASAL regions, 31 out of 47 counties. So when we talk of integrity and track records and history, this is a candidate who's favored by that. Whereas there are others who, when history is mentioned, they are on their feet because history does not remember them correctly because of the track record they've put there. So mine would be, let's not look at it as an angle of young and old. Let's focus on putting Honorable Raila Odinga in office, and then we can have this discussion, because he's been a youth at some point. He has had that track record.
Trevor.
He's been in government. He's had that track record.
Trevor.
He's offered peace over his own interest. Because once handshake was made, if it was me or you in that position, we would want to have something out of that government. But he stood out of it and said, for now, let's look at what's good for the country. Let's move forward. He could easily say, I want A, B, C, D. The people who are able to share the government easily, we saw the representation from that. I sit on this table, I did not see someone who looks like me from those appointments. But when Honorable Raila Odinga was, had that opportunity, he was able to do that. If we have a candidate who, during his time in assembly, and I would say maybe as a speaker, for example, was not able to support the 2/3 gender rule, how do I as a woman believe in that candidate for president?
Right.
How do I again believe in someone who, for example, has had, sat in an assembly and looked at the draconian security rules and passed them. It's a question of integrity for me, because security affects me every day as someone who comes from the border counties. There are things you look at when you want to vote for somebody, not because you're a young person, not because you're an old person. You'll question the integrity and the track record. History favors Honorable Raila Odinga very well.
Okay.
That's something I would like to put out first
All right.
of all.
Gakeni, and that is where really the rubber meets the
I'm
road.
here.
How do the
Yeah.
young people decide who they are going to vote for? Because Hichalo here is saying they don't have a stand. They just, money affects their stand and reasoning.
I think as young people, we need to be honest with ourselves, because actually what lacks in us are virtues that are very basic, that the way you were brought up, you need to know that being honest with yourself, it starts from us before we point at other leaders and at the older generation. Because you'll find a youth living a life beyond themselves. You will find a youth believing in things that do not even exist. And that is where now issues start happening. If today I go and borrow a car that is worth 10 million, but I don't earn as much, I'm already being dishonest to myself. If I'm living a life just to show off, but I can't manage that kind of expenditure, that in itself is lack of honesty with yourself. Until you're honest with yourself and know that you have to grow with time. Trevor, you didn't just wake up and found yourself on set at Citizen TV. You worked, you went through internship, somebody sharpened you to go to where you are. But our youths today, what we do, I want to wake up one day, pick a mic, do campaigns, and become the president of this nation. I want to campaign for someone and possibly become their running mate or get nominated. It doesn't just happen like that. You have to earn it, you have to be patient, and you have to follow some values. You don't just support someone because of money, and that is where now integrity is coming in. And I'm feeling like a bit hot because I can find the word integrity being misused somewhere. Yes. I don't think integrity and Raila Odinga can follow in one sentence.
Oh, yes.
Because this is a man who went to Uhuru Park to swear himself in as the president of Kenya when we had somebody sitting as a president. That is treasonable. And in fact, if he was a man of integrity, he couldn't do such a thing in this country, not in this era. It is unfortunate that the man who was conducting the swearing in was neglected by the same Raila. And then you say that he's a man of integrity. No way. He's not a man of integrity because it had to take President Uhuru to shake hands with him so that people can do business in Nairobi. There was a Monday, it was tear gas Monday every Monday. Is that a man of integrity? Let us understand the meaning of integrity.
Okay.
The other thing that I want to say is youth and money. Pesa ikikuja tukule kabisa. But when we go to vote, let's vote value and integrity. I had the Kenya Kwanza guy say
Kennedy.
that corruption we need somebody who can fight corruption. And I need to say this. Corrupt leaders cannot and will never fight corruption. No way.
Who are the corrupt leaders?
I just said...
Don't start mentioning
yes,
names.
I am not mentioning names. I said corrupt leaders will not have a solution for this nation. Madam Umi, I don't know how to pronounce her name. It's Umi.
Umi.
She said that the speaker has not been able to achieve the 2/3 gender.
I did not say the speaker. I said, the presence of an individual that was unable to, respect the constitution is not someone we would be able to trust the country with.
Okay.
Because we are looking at integrity issues.
Who did not then?
I am not mentioning
Parliament, you don't
She also, yes, she also said...
Parliament had a mandate to do that.
She also talked about passing of bills, the security draconian bills, she called it. I think Kenyans have a problem, and a big problem, because I see some people tweet very fine English, if I may say so. People who seem learned with the language they use. Unfortunately, they fail to understand a very simple thing, the role of a speaker in this nation. Constitutionally, I just need to remind them that the speaker cannot bring a motion to Parliament, cannot support or oppose a motion. If you have a problem with any bills that passed in this assembly, if you have a problem with anything that was passed in the assembly or in the Parliament, then go blame your MP. because that is solely the work of your MP. The much the Speaker can do is moderate all prioritized motions. So youth, please, as you look for leaders to vote for, look at track records. I said it sometimes back. Today, if I want to work anywhere in this country, they ask for my CV, they ask for my experience, they ask for referees so that they can call and ask what kind of a person I am. On top of that, they ask for EACC documents, they ask for DCI,
Certificate of Good Conduct.
Yes, Certificate of Good Conduct. And I want to challenge the youths today. Let us look at all the leaders that are vying, from the MCA to the top seat. Look at their track records. We are giving them jobs. We need to look at their CVs.
Okay.
That is all.
All right, Charles.
Thank you, Trevor.
What should the youth consider before they decide who they are voting for?
All right, thank you, Trevor. And maybe before saying what the youth should consider, there's a quote I like that says that genius sometimes is knowing when to stop. And one of the challenges we have with our old guard leaders, and I want to disagree with my sister Umi when she says that it's not about being old or being young. And yes, our issue is not about just being old or being young. But you see, Trevor, I know we engaged even in our earlier days when I was president in campus. And you are not as refined, probably, as you are today. There are people I admired in the media spaces. But I admired them, and I still admire them, because when time came to stop, they did stop. And that created space for someone like you and other young people that we see today and admire. We have a challenge as a nation because we have old guards who have refused to hand over to young people. And the most unfortunate thing is that the young people are still supporting these old guards. Now, you see, my sister Umi says that Raila is a person who people resonate with and might not face financial challenges because people would even be willing to support and maybe even fundraise for him. But my question as a radical youth is, can Raila support a young person? Can he resonate with a young person and even go to the extent of endorsing or even fundraising for a young person? Because, I mean, he has served. You know, it beats logic. My grandmother is 75 years old. The presidential candidate who my president endorsed is 77 years old. In the past years, the contest was between people who the people in my generation would call grandfathers. You know, Moi and Raila, Kibaki, Raila, they were our grandfathers. And at some point, Uhuru came and now told us that as a nation and as generally the globe is going through something, and we have to move from analog to digital. And Trevor, it was so serious that they even switched off our analog TVs. In fact, we had a stalemate, if you remember. We had a stalemate when people were resisting transitioning from analog to digital. But with time, we had to accept that it's time that the nation and the world transitions from analog to digital. And it's at that time when President Kenyatta told us that now we cannot vote for these analog guys. We need to vote for the digital guys. And we transitioned. And Trevor, we cannot keep on undoing the same gains that we have taken time to do or to achieve. Today, the same president who told us to move from analog to digital is telling us to again move from digital to analog. And I'm telling you, Mr. President, I have no problem. But then he would first of all have to turn back, you know, to return my old TV set that was disabled because it was analog, so that now we realize that it's time. It's actually time for us to revert back to analog. So I am saying this. Raila has been a statesman, and I appreciate, among so many other people. And allow me to mention someone like James Orengo. There's a time all of us as a country had admiration for a lawyer like James Orengo. We termed him as a walking constitution. But he has failed to realize when it is time to stop. Today, the same man we admired as a walking constitution is on record going to court to defend a case that even my grandmother back at home knew that was going to fail. The same man who had filed a petition to say that the presidential election was rigged. He's on record going to defend a person who is affirming that, yes, the election you are saying was rigged was actually rigged. Now he's going to defend, because when you do not know when it's time to stop, it gets to a point where you start contradicting yourself. We read Raila Odinga in books as a champion of multi-party democracy. Today, we might have again to revise our syllabus so that we read him as a state project, because he's no longer now the Raila we knew, who was an advocate for the people's rights. Lastly, Trevor, I am still insisting on the youth agenda, because sometimes we come here and diverge from the youth and politics to discussing issues of the older generation. As a radical movement, our rallying call or our mantra is nothing for us without us. And we are saying, in whichever formation the youth are in, let us not constitute ourselves into tribal cocoons, but let us advocate for our space as a youth. Our brothers and sisters are having challenges, vying for these positions because of resources, as one of the things that have been quoted, competing with the incumbents who have massive resources and support. But as radical, we are saying, Trevor, it is possible for me to rally a group of youth to fundraise for one of us, to go to Mashinani and campaign for one of us.
Yeah.
It is possible for us to engage our political parties. And I want to extend an invitation to my friends and our viewers, because on Saturday 5th, next month, we want to convene a national youth convention, a radical national youth convention of all the youth of goodwill in this country at Limuru. Because previously the tycoons and old people have been convening meetings to give us direction. This time around, Trevor, we want to convene ourselves as a youth, create our own youth charter, say what is our stake in this government. I mean, the previous regimes has been a competition between our grandfathers. Then it reached a point, now the generation of our fathers started competing. This time around, we want a competition between our generation, or a collaboration between our generation and the generation of our fathers. So we are saying, for example, in our Kenya Kwanza Alliance, we do not just want to dive into Kenya Kwanza. We also want to have a section that supports Kenya Kwanza, that advocates and that is guided by the mantra, Vijana Kwanza.
Okay.
Trevor,
before anything else, we will have Vijana Kwanza in Kenya Kwanza, so that to support Kenya Kwanza.
Okay.
So that we send somebody, just one statement.
Yeah.
If we are going to send someone to State House, an older person to State House, then you are telling them, instead of promising us things as a youth, when you get to power, we want to form government together. Okay. We take you to State House, leave the current office to us, for example. Trevor, what is it that I don't have to qualify to be a deputy president, for example?
Okay.
I think I have the numbers.
Let's do this in reverse.
I need to ask him something. I find a lot of hypocrisy in what is happening. Because he says that Kenya Kwanza is youthful. But I saw something that really surprised me.
I have not said Kenya Kwanza is youthful. I have said we'll have Vijana Kwanza in Kenya Kwanza.
Thank you.
So please don't misquote me.
Okay. But I need us to be very, very clear and not hypocritical in any way. My friend there said that why youths are not vying is because they have no money. And somebody else here asked if Honorable Raila Odinga would fundraise for a youth. Somebody asked that. And I asked myself, when these people who come saying we want to engage the youths, but when then there is a ticket for, I don't know, Nairobi governor, we see Margaret Wanjiru. Is she a youth? Is she a mama mboga? Let us not be lured into funny cliches, mama mboga, mutu ya boda. But when they go to giving positions, when they pick people for their tickets and in different positions, sasa makosa mama mboga. I really don't understand that. Youths.
No, if they come up with something.
Let me finish.
It's coming this way.
Your chance is coming. Youths, I must say this. If you feel that you need to buy, we saw something happening in Nairobi sometimes back between Minor Commander and Jaguar. Because as we said, that muscle, the financial muscle that we lack, should never make us subject to people that are just trying to use us. Another thing that I want to say is that when people talk to youths, luring them into their own game, and they say bottom up, of course, youth, it is us being targeted bottom up, because it is us at the bottom. We don't have the billions, we don't have the millions. And this person who talks about bottom up is none other than the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. He chairs the IBEC. IBEC is a commission that
decides money that goes
decides where money goes to in the counties. These things that he's telling us bottom up, I don't know, I'll do what for every constituency, for everything, I don't know, we'll set up some SMEs. As the chair, he should have done that like yesterday. What has stopped him? So I'm telling kids, I remember just recently at the Democratic Party NDC, in his speech, my candidate, JB Muturi, said that he's going to scrap the youth ministry because he feels it is very unfair for the entire government to place youths in just one ministry. And he said he would rather that every ministry accommodates 70% of youths. That does not mean that I'm out to hit the old generation. We need them. If my dad was not here with me, if my mom never brought me up, if she's not watching and is going to tell me, oh, there you did ABCD, we need them to guide us. We cannot say that as youths, we can run this nation. We need people with history about this nation. We need people who are experienced and advanced to hold our hands. But that doesn't mean that we cannot make it. We don't need them to use us. Don't be used just to appear in rallies, hold placards, sing I don't know who or who, and then you go home. We need people whose campaigns we can see they're already giving roles to youths. We need people who have dreams.
Okay.
Trevor,
all right, no.
allow me to respond because
my comments are very
I think
few,
that was a reaction to my statement, Trevor.
Hold on, everyone is reacting.
My comments are very few, and they're few for a reason.
Yeah.
Because I'd want to say this. Sitting on this table, I was mentored. And sitting on this table, I would not have, the guts to say I can lead this country, because I know the demands that are there to lead a country. And there's no limit to anybody, there's no limit to any age, but you need the mentorship. And what Azimio and our candidate is offering is a ministry that will support these young people. That is the first point of mentorship, not as a CS, not as an assistant minister, but a fully fledged ministry led by young people. And I think when I hear my colleague Charles talk about having a youth movement, I think he's in the wrong camp. Maybe he should come over, because this is where his needs and his visions as a radical youth will be accommodated. My other point is the barriers to why we have not so many young people in government is corruption. And corruption is one of the things that we are planning to eliminate. And the reason Honorable Raila Odinga has always been fought is because he openly rallied for an end to corruption. Not many people are willing to have a candidate who can boldly stand before the public and say, part of my manifesto is to fight corruption. Now is the time, and when we do that, we will be able to not just have a youth ministry, but have departments that have young people across the country. Same case as what happened with devolution, because when we had devolved government, power came down to the people in the grassroots. And with that, we've seen so many young people getting employment opportunities. That's part of having a vision for young people. And, it's just a matter of not just making promises, but a continuity to track records and precedences that were set by Honorable Raila Odinga the few times that he was in power, and with his influence even out of power. And that's why he had to make so many sacrifices too. So mine would be just to think, if as young people we need to feel represented, we need to feel that we are heard, we are not being used in rallies. He went around the country on Azimio trails, looking out for the voices of young people, sitting down with them. And I'm a beneficiary of this, because he came to Garissa, sat down in our own compound, took a notepad and listened to what we had to say. And a replica of that happened across the country. If that is not listening and getting to hear what the young people need and delivering what the young people need, then I don't think we are ready to be mentored as young people. We have the opportunity.
Trevor, there's something that I really wanted to put across. You know, sometimes it will need the intervention of God. We need to pray for ODM followers because sometimes they support spiritually. There's a spirit, a bad spirit hovering around them. Yeah, sometimes they don't want to put issues where they're supposed to be because that is where I actually like the way Umi is articulating her issues, but let us not focus on this presidential candidate. Be that as it may, I want to tell you what we are doing as Kenya Kwanza, because as young people in Kenya Kwanza, apart from what our presidential candidates are talking about, agro-processing, value addition, reducing foreign debt, fighting corruption, we have said we have actually tabled our issues as young people, represent political parties. And we have said, first and foremost, what we want is the reduction of the cost of registering businesses. We want you to eliminate all the license required to do business at the county level. We want you to increase the 30% quota to 40% because that is something that we negotiate. We want you to increase the 1 billion that you give youth fund to 2 billion Kenya shillings come the next financial year. We want you to increase the 15.8 billion that you're giving the help board to 20 billion so that young people can access, education. We have also said that in your government, we need 30% representation in the appointing position, in the ministries, in the parastatals, and even in the embassies. And that is something that we have tabled. So sometimes let us not just, argue spiritually that because we are supporting someone, but we must also, as young people, table our issues and issues that are affecting the most young people. That is the most important, Trevor. And by and large, what I wanted to, tell young people, sometimes when you look at mentorship, and I agree with you, sometimes when you talk about integrity, we are some of the people who are affected seriously with her presidential candidate. Remember during NASA, our friend Raila Odinga abandoned the struggle and he lied to us that there were crocodiles at River Jordan. Sometimes even today we are still asking ourselves, it's in the Bible. And he abandoned even his partners. When the money came for political parties fund, instead they abused us and they said, we cannot give you, you think we can give you that money? They ended up using that money alone. So sometimes when you talk about integrity, sometimes you look at some few things. But, sometimes also we give credit where it is due. Raila has fought for this country. He's suffered. And I believe that the issues that he has raised, and he has brought the devolution, he has brought the 2010 constitution, other good things. But things Raila of those days is not Raila of today, because those days he stood with the people. He fought for the people because we were going to Canaan. There are issues that we raised with him, and we told him we must take the issues to Canaan, but he turned back.
Has that changed just because of the support from the president? And
he shook hands. And nowadays, you've seen since they shook hands. Nowadays, even we are not discussing corruptions, the food prices. Actually, recently, Raila himself said that Kenya must have debts. So it means that issues affecting young people is no longer interested. So sometimes we must understand the dynamics of politics. And as young people, our resolve is to ensure that we must ensure that we have our space. Again, I wanted to add, Trevor, I come from Nyanza region, and I can tell you for a fact that if you look at the politics of Nyanza region, where Raila comes from, and the stronghold of ODM, I've never seen a young person who has been mentored to take over from Raila Odinga. Compared to other political parties like ANC, and I can tell you for a fact that sometimes I thank Musalia Mudavadi because he has mentored me to whom I am today. I'm a director of political strategy. We also have almost 7 directors who are youthful in the political parties. If you look at ODM, apart from the youth wing, you will never see any young people at the helm, ranks and file of the party. So sometimes you look at young people need to know where they are favored and where they are participating most.
Okay.
And lastly, sometimes you cannot participate when you are outside. Sometimes we urge young people to first of all register in political parties, because that is where we are learning to swim with the sharks. Sometimes you learn how to swim with the sharks. Because politics is a dirty game. So if you're not in it, you'll not understand how it is played. So that is where we do our politics. We are asking young people to join political parties and start engaging and participating in leadership. Leadership is taken. Nobody will come to your house and give you leadership. Some of us have suffered and we have come from far to where we are today. So we believe that those who have made it and those who are still willing to make it, even those who are contesting, because I was also saying that young people cannot contest and cannot look for these positions. Already we have young people in parliament, but we want to increase that number by actually coming out and supporting each other.
All right.
And so long as we support a young person who has values, a young person who have integrity, a young person who is able, because somebody was telling me sometimes when they give young people who have not married, now that's the time they get married and they take ratio. Sometimes, you look at both sides. Look at somebody who will be able to address your issues.
All right. Let me take some feedback, then I'll come to you as we close on this discussion, because we're running out of time. Let's see what you're saying online first. Let's bring that up and see. Then Chalowood Rosie says, youth cannot be trusted by top leadership in the country. It's better to have an old wise man as the president than an incompetent young person. Okay.
Correct.
Sengeli Bryant says, youth have unique challenges, and that's why they're under SIGs. They need more their legislative policy or affirmative actions with proper structures to ensure bridging of the gaps for them to effectively participate in electoral governance. Okay. Engineer Nazaro says the youth have been reduced to champion tribal cocoons and clap for them in political rallies. It's now time they should walk out from their slumber and offer solutions in national politics. Abdirahman Ali says there's nothing wrong addressing my people with a language they understand. Remember, Uhuru was to explain to his people why he parted ways with Ruto. Why panic whenever Uhuru speaks? Uhuru's gloves are off now. Let his opponents be ready for a major fight. Mosegere Jackson says youth should wake up and stand with 2 feet and realize nothing new will come from politicians in 2022, which never happened previously. Okelo Mwalimu says the fact that youth have accepted to be segregated so as to be used as flower girls in Kenya's political space is a major point of concern. It's ironical that despite being the majority, we're still waiting to be given leadership positions. Who bewitched us? Okay. Charles, start with you and start with you, closing remarks. Because you're running out of time.
All right, thank you, Trevor.
Yeah.
So I wanted, first of all, I'll start with the issue about what my brother has mentioned about Raila Odinga. And you asked a question whether anything changed about him when he joined the government. And I would say there's something I admire about all the former presidents. Like when it comes to Moi, I admire the fact that he gave us free milk, and that as he ended his term, at least he believed in a young person for whatever reasons. The motives might not have been pure, but at least he believed in a young person who in turn has disappointed and reverted back to the people who are competing with Moi. But I admire something also about Raila Odinga, and that is he has very good table manners, because since he joined the Jubilee and the government, it seems that he has keenly observed table manners. There is no longer corruption, no major scandals. Uhuru is no longer a thief, because when you are eating, you should keep your mouth closed. But at least one thing I would say is that even when observing table manners, sometimes when you see an accident about to happen, you're allowed to at least shout. So at least while he observes table manners, he should shout sometimes when things get out of hand, like when we have issues like KEMSA and Pandora. But number two, I want to respond to my sister and my friend Gakenia here, who has mentioned something that is untrue, because when he says that we have picked Margaret and given her a party ticket in Nairobi, that is false, because number one, UDA is not issuing out tickets to people. UDA will have candidates who have vied of their own volition, and they will participate in the most free and fair nominations, because I am sure, and I private information, that we are preparing and working on having the best and the most free and fair party nominations that we've had than any other we've had in this country. So we've not picked Margaret or any other person. Margaret vied, and we appreciate the fact that she has vied, so as any other candidates who have vied in this country. And we've not restricted anyone from vying. You know, Trevor, sometimes people like taking things out of context. When we talk about Mama Mboga, we are not saying that we are going to force Mama Mboga to vie simply because they are Mama Mboga. But of course, no Mama Mboga will vie, and we tell them that you cannot vie because you are Mama Mboga. But most importantly, we have the bottom-up economic model that is working on empowering these people through SMEs, through reviving circles and cooperatives, and creating funds, you know, to empower those people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. So it is wrong to maybe misquote that. So we are not dishing out party tickets. We have free and fair nominations. Lastly, I know she has tried to poke holes, you know, into the candidature maybe of our presidential candidate, while trying to mention her preferred presidential candidate. But you know, I refuse to just engage because she's supporting an unstarter, and maybe engaging would be campaigning for someone who otherwise is not anywhere in the graph. But anyway, the person he's supporting is on record being a person who does not believe in young people, because I remember the other day he reprimanded and humiliated a very youthful MP by the name Kawanjiko because of you know, stepping out to go to the washrooms when there was an issue in Parliament. And you know, when Trevor, if a new person comes here and you've been here long enough, it's not you should not humiliate or, you know, reprimand that person in public. Okay. If you have not given them a chance, you know, if I'm new here and you see me doing something that is not in accord with the ground rules for this place, as a mentor, you know, you should call me aside and guide me on that. Okay. So I want to say that we, as the young people in this nation, and I'm insisting on that, the tweets that you've read here and the reactions, most young people have lost faith. And as a radical youth movement, that's the faith that we want to restore. We want to champion something for ourselves, to forge a way for ourselves, to champion for something, and, you know, to engage, to have a youth charter with the people and with the parties that we support, so that we can have and create our space and our niche in the political space. All right, I'm running out of time here, so you each have just 1 minute for closing remarks.
I wish to respond to him about Kawanjiko and indiscipline. Let us not call indiscipline. When somebody is telling you you must be disciplined, then don't call that being despised. Because I believe everywhere, even when I came in here, from the reception all the way here, I was under instructions, and I've never been here before. Everybody, when you go to Parliament, there is a session of orientation. I believe he was well orientated, and you must be disciplined everywhere you go, and that is a problem we have with the youths. I want to talk about our discipline as youths. Help today is a big issue in this country. Not because the government doesn't put enough money in help, but because we lack integrity and order in this nation. How many youths are employed today, but they are not honest enough to be responsible to pay up their help? If they paid, if only a half of the youths that owe help pays today in honesty, I believe we shall be way ahead. Another thing he said, that my presidential candidate is a non-starter, says a youth. Yes. Says a youth to a man who has held positions beyond the borders of this nation. This man, you say, is a non-starter, has been the chair and the president for anti-corruption networks, the entire Africa. He's also the chair for Commonwealth Association, leading all the speakers in the African nations, the man you call an...
I have his profile, but in the presidential contest, he's a non-starter.
I said we must look at CVs. We must look at CVs. We must look at people. What do they hold? Are they leaders of integrity? A man of integrity will instill discipline in this country. People will have to do what has to be done. People will take responsibility, and therefore we shall have a prosperous nation. Okay, I have 2 more minutes. Let me say the last one, Trevor. As I finish, I want to say something in Swahili. In our endeavors, in everything that we do, we always look for mali safi, kitu ambayo haiko tainted. We have one man who is mali safi, JB Motu.
Umi, 1 minute.
I'll be brief. Mine would be to just say that even as we go around the country to convince every Kenyan, young, old, everybody, we will continue selling our manifestos through a language that everybody understands, not through insults, not through derogatory terms.
Yeah.
Our agenda is to install peace even as we transition into government.
All right.
And I would like to also really reinforce my point on history. If we are to move forward, if we are to look into the future of this country, we have to look back. We have to look back at the candidate that you're voting for.
Okay.
If on one hand you've been dismissed because of corruption before, it's very hard for me to be convinced that when you're in government, you'd be able to deliver that presidency in a manner that is seamless and corruption-free.
All right.
And also, the agenda for women is a very, and I think this is something that has to come up, is a very sensitive issue for the country that we are in.
Yeah.
A candidate who's supported, if you look at the political environment around the country, if you look at the women who are currently holding the helms in the politics of this country, were mentored and their hands were held by Honorable Raila Odinga.
Okay.
This will be a continuity of that. So mine is to say, if as a young person from where you sit, you feel the pains of this country, you feel the gaps that we have, you feel that the economy is high, you feel that the living costs are high, you cannot eliminate the roles of corruption in those factors.
Okay.
And if the candidate you're vouching for and you're drumming support for has a history of corruption and tries so hard to run away from history, then you have to consider what you vote.
All right, Ken, 1 minute.
Trevor, political trumpets are being blown. Just as when Jesus finished talking to his people, 7 priests went forward and started blowing trumpets of hope. We want to urge our political leaders and those who are running for presidential positions to give us the messages of hope. Let us give us peace. Let them talk issues that will build this country, but not issues that will divide this country. Just as when you listen to songs, we can see political songs being composed. I want to urge young people to listen to songs or political messages that will soothe their souls, that will make them peaceful, that will address their issues, and that is the direction we want them to take. And Trevor, we also want to urge our leaders, even members of parliament, to amend laws that will enable young people, because right now young people are looking for political positions, and one of the requirements that is needed is CRB. You know, this country is so broke that to the extent that young people are on this digital online platforms, to the extent that they cannot pay this loan. So they need CRB requirements, and that is a serious challenge that needs to be amended so that we move forward. And again, as a party and as Kenya Kwanza, we are so much interested, and we have taken deliberate effort to ensure that we have gender in all the things we do, and we have come up with initiatives to protect and support women who are contesting, and even young people who are contesting. So we welcome you, and even Justin Muturi, to come and join the team Kenya Kwanza, because that is where hope is.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for making time. It's time for Level Up Friday, and thank you so much for all the feedback that you sent through to us. All right, bye for now.